different ways. Um, so I'd like to say thank you to everybody for joining us. We're now going to turn to our structured Q&A. We have had a number of questions coming in. Please feel free to put them into the panel. The one that's come in, I'm going to let Andrea answer. And the first question is, Andrea, how are you finding mindfulness and being adopted in businesses in Canada, especially your experiences with selling this reflection need to chief revenue officers and or senior VPs of sales or just leadership in sales? You know the beast, I know the beast, we are the beast. Are they getting it? I've not noticed a lot of deep reflective sales leaders that are really just slowing down and focusing on the moment and just advising their sales resources and reps just to take a moment of just to be and just enjoy the silence. So what are your thoughts?
I realized I was muted, so I've now unmuted. So what I have noticed, Cindy, is that sales leaders have made room for coaching. Not a pipeline review, but coaching with an outcome of improved leadership behaviors as well as employee engagement. You know, big organizations spend a lot of money on employee engagement surveys as well as on leadership development, and coaching is one of the key ways to accomplish that. But don't take it just from me. Rogers Telecom won a prestigious PRISM Award for implementing coaching. And they didn't do it just small. They did it across all 400 call center managers, which had a net benefit of a bump of all of their key performance indicators that these managers measured their own frontline customer-facing reps. So make room for coaching. That's the answer, bottom line.
Thanks, Andrea. I think it's really hard to change behavior. What are your thoughts in terms of how one might proceed to really drive the impact of practicing mindfulness? In other words, the biggest bang for your investment.
It is really hard to change behavior. And one of the hobby jobs that I have is a fitness instructor. So I'm part of changing physical behavior all of the time. And remember, we started by talking about the metaphorical tape lines or setting the intention. The first step is to identify with perfect clarity what it is that you really want, because that's where you get your internal or your intrinsic motivators. And then second, test the assumptions. And third, and most importantly, make the choices of saying yes and no, not just the actions, but the way of being with intentionality.
Thanks, Andrea. I one of the questions that I'm sure everybody's dying to hear the response is, how often do I practice mindfulness? And what are you doing, Andrea, in terms of practice? And is it part of your daily routine? Is it every second day, every once a week? Just curious in terms of how you are applying these reflective, skills.
Well, short answer is every day. And here, that's what I do. And I don't do it necessarily sitting and doing meditation. Sometimes I do it while moving with whatever it is that I choose to do. But someone who's way better known than me, Tim Ferriss, who most recently published Tools of Titans. Tools of Titans was a summary of over 200 interviews of titans in business, sports, arts, and so on. He summarized and discovered that over 80% of all those titans that he interviewed had a morning ritual that incorporated a mindfulness practice. That's what he discovered. And, I'm always reading about Olympians and other famous people. And Dr. Michael Gervais, who's an advisor to Olympians, he said that the aim of mindfulness is to provide insight and wisdom. And the aim of imagery, which is taking all of those senses, the 5 senses that we have, is enhanced performance. So imagery is the next step that I take my own personal clients from merely bringing in the 5 senses to making what they really want and making it real.
Thanks, Andrea. In terms of your experiences in your consulting practice, any thoughts on companies that are really making a difference in practicing mindfulness in Canada or other countries? And what are your thoughts there? So people have some monikers or landmarks for potential benchmarking if they choose to downstream.
Well, you at the top, you mentioned some companies that have taken time out of their business world to focus on mindfulness. I too, while doing this particular topic of work-life harmony, I've met and engaged other organizations such as Procter and Gamble and Acon, the construction company, that they have incorporated using mindfulness in business and in meetings. And even at Xerox, we didn't use the nomenclature of mindfulness, but we were intentional and thoughtful about the way that we engaged. You might even remember, Cindy, do you remember making those Giesen stacks? It was just quality training on how to engage people in a thoughtful way.
I do. I remember them fondly. I actually have a series of handmade geese that also, to me, symbolize sense of focus and alignment and in harmony and formation. So I certainly value reflection and renewal. It's something, to your point, of all of us to remind ourselves. I know in my little ritual, I go for a walk for an hour, usually between 7 and 8, and I find that time, just to sort of reflect, look around, see the little rabbits that are out, the cats, the dogs, everybody walking their dogs. It's always good fun just to totally get out of, my normal rituals of, just sheer business thoughts flowing through my mind. But it does create an entry point into the day. I notice a big difference when I don't have that early harmony. So, not sure I'm of Titan status, but it was good to hear the research. I quite enjoyed that. Um, in terms of when I look at companies on whether or not they've got core values on mindfulness, right into their corporate fabric, I certainly remember Xerox, one of their core values was organizational, um, you know, um, sort of, it wasn't renewal, but it was really around organizational and excellence and organizational learning. That's the word. It was organizational learning, which does create a feedback loop for sure. I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with Stephen Kerr. If you're from the US, you may very well be, but yeah, he was the head coach for the Golden State Warriors and also an advisory board member of the PCA. And he led the National Basketball Championship and took them to record wins through the season. And it was interesting in terms of when you get into his little story in Phoenix, and he had four guiding coaching values for the Warriors. Number one was joy. No matter what out there, we have to have joy, no matter what the outcome. Mindfulness was one of his core anchored values. That being focused, sense of purpose, who's got the ball, who's moving the ball to whom. Remember, we're a team. Compassion, and also the perspective of competition, but not at the sake of not having joy. And you know what? They had incredible results. So again, to your point of the earlier analogy of being on the squash court, I can relate to that because I play squash quite avidly. And you're right. Creating that visualization can really, drive you to higher performance levels. One of the Seahawks coaches, being Pete Carroll, said, pare down your core values and tailor your daily routine around those core values. Better to have less than more. And I think we've all seen in many of our organizations, if you go from employee to employee and you ask them to articulate your core values, can they do that? Obviously, being in an AI company, one of our core values, we make data speak. I think everybody here knows that. We have a passion for innovation. We also create ethically sound AI. We're not a black box AI, and you'll start to see in the new year some of the good work that Malay's been doing as he's been climbing the mountain with Ernst and Young. Some of our new videos that will be talking about the need for more transparency and AI. We've had a pretty good year, everyone. We've got a lot of great materials in our predictive AI world, so I'm kind of bridging to close out. We started off the year with predictable revenue readiness. by a very famous author. We talked about pathways to closure with sales forecasting process with Karen Hayward and our chairman, Dr. Kevin Francis, former CEO and chairman of Xerox. Today, we've been delighted to have Andrea talk about achieving work-life harmony, dealing with some of the gaps that we certainly have as sales leaders, but obviously mindfulness can be applied to any profession or any person who wants a better sense of well-being and purpose. Because we're kind of a geeky crowd, there's good content on making sense of data and data science readiness and how to build better business intelligence dashboards. We spent some time as well around predicting customer churn in terms of how predictable AI could be applied. And our last session, which I think is now up on the website in our resources section, was all around building a global sales community, which was really around the collaborative nature in order to keep sharing best practices, but also to create that sense of community and that sense of belonging. So in closing out today, if you want to reach out to Andrea to continue your discussions with her, by all means, please do. If you're feeling that your sales resources, because looking at the roster, there's a number of you using Salesforce. If you'd like to, give Malay or I a reach out so we can share with you what we've been building and deploying into both mid to large enterprises. It's not a small business play with our AI software. You typically need to have at least 25 sales professionals and about 1,000 historical wins and losses just to get the baseline moving. So to all of you today, thank you so much for joining us with our Predictive AI World. We're closing out a successful season of 2017, and Malay and I are very busy starting to outline the program for next year. And for many of you who've been continued participants, we really do appreciate it. And hopefully you're finding our series of value to you in your everyday practices. So in closing, again, thank you for joining us and have a terrific afternoon. Your learning and interest is always sincerely appreciated. Thank you so much. Cindy Gordon signing off.